I think we should move on to the very last of the discussion sessions, which was on education and capacity building. I believe Nicolas and Martin Vanhove will report on this.
Thank you, Christina. So a short, like many sessions, of course, we did not have enough time to make a decent report, so we just scribbled something. We were talking, we started our education and capacity building session talking about the importance of teaching what many people here have termed soft skills like interdisciplinarity, conflict management, leadership, and so on. And the challenges that are presented by the involvement of people from various disciplines with different ideologies. And if we mean various disciplines, we don't mean vets, biologists, and agronomists, but we mean also to include, for instance, people from business sector, from education, that are, of course, much more fundamentally different than biologists are from agronomists. And that it would also be interesting to teach in One Health programs on involvement and interactions with all these different disciplines. Now, in the talks we saw some examples of how the involvement of these different disciplines actually already presents concrete challenges. The first example that was presented was that it is not that easy for students, for instance, applying for a grant, PhD grant, to defend their proposal in front of an interdisciplinary team. And the second concrete problem that was suggested was the case of an outbreak of bilharzia in Senegal, where we actually saw that over the course of the last 20 years, numerous teams had been working on that problem, on the same problem in the same region, the same outbreak, without knowing it of each other. So a very specific case where interdisciplinarity is lacking, actually not even interdisciplinarity, just a complete lack of communication between different research groups, let alone different disciplines. Now, inherent to One Health, of course, is that human, animal, and environmental health need to be integrated, which is also the philosophy we think that should be used and that in One Health education. And we saw an example of that in the interstate veterinary school in Dakar. Now, various of our talks in our session showed that capacities both for monitoring, for detection of diseases, for identification of parasites, that capacities for that and the involvement of students from the South need to be improved in the South. So many of our case studies centered on One Health problems in Africa. And then, of course, in those things, a train-the-trainer approach is crucial. Now, we do not only want to sum up problems here. Let's hope we can also suggest some solutions. So why not try to learn together to foster afterwards working together? The question was asked, how can different disciplines work together in their professional careers if they have never studied together, if they have never followed common training? Also the use of evidence-based innovative educational approaches was promoted. Things that are perhaps quite common or quite logical for certain disciplines, but that seem to be very exotic to many teachers from the so-called hard sciences. Things that are received often with a bit of skepticism, but that do seem to work. As I said, evidence-based stuff that do seem to work also for the hard sciences. Some challenges that were raised is how about the accessibility of these training programs, because of course they are only accessible to people who actually follow these and who are subscribed to these innovative master programs or people who get into a capacity building program. So do we want large or small scale capacity building? Because some of these capacity building programs of course entail very intensive, almost one-to-one collaboration with a limited number of students. Although a train-to-trainer approach can kind of resolve this issue. And then these approaches that we suggest, are these mandatory in the training? Are they applied throughout the training? Or is there just one module and then allows you to tick off the box of interdisciplinarity without actually integrating it into the whole training? So these were the aspects we discussed, and we were thinking, because of course we did not have, like all sessions, we did not have enough time to finish all the world's problems in this regard in those 2 hours. So we considered whether it may be interesting to start with a community of practice on education and capacity building for interdisciplinarity in health. And also, we would invite people. We had thought already before this session that it may be interesting to write together a kind of opinion paper on education and capacity building in this field. And so I guess that people who would like to contribute to that, who have any opinion, that can contact Nicolas or myself for that. Thank you.
Excellent. Such an important point. Education, capacity building, it really is at the heart of everything. It is incredibly important to train the trainer, to train the students, the new generations, but it's also incredibly important to train the people working in policy and policymakers. So I would love to hear your thoughts and anybody else in the room's thoughts about how we can successfully do that, how we can successfully engage with and train or build capacity at the policy level. I believe there's somebody, oh, yes.
Yes, maybe that a first clue in this really big question. Maybe I would think of processes like we already mentioned in this workshop, I think, like companion modeling, when we are working with communities, then often at the local level. But these companion modeling and all these process of discussion around the common representation of the problem and so on can be mobilized also with people that are not at the local level but at the policy making level to build a common representation, and doing this by a problem solving approach from the educational side, we can certainly build some capacity in interdisciplinarity.
Excellent. I believe there was a comment or a question over here.
Yes, actually, as a follow-up to the question Christina just posed, other areas of education besides, well, professional training, evidently there's great need, perhaps a lot of opportunities even in general purpose adult education, say to groups like policymakers or local people, so that I think in some respects is a different, although overlapping area with that of professional training in One Health, which need a more generalized approach, maybe a lot of innovative approaches as well as to how to arouse the interest, speak to them. For instance, the cultural sensitivity to groups you're addressing. So, well, kind of popularization approaches would be valuable and so on.
Excellent point. I think we have time for one more after this. Should we take the question first and then?
Yes, certainly.
Just because we're running out of time, so.
It doesn't have anything to do with the. I don't need this. Well, it's just a short question.
Then I would just comment a bit that indeed, and in such a community of practice, we would need certainly experts of andragogy, so I mean pedagogy for adults, and understand how to foster that learning in different cultural settings too. Often we are thinking of cultural importance in the learning when dealing with the local communities worldwide. But certainly it's exactly the same challenge when addressing the cultures and the subcultures inside the professions here and here in Europe, I would say, even across the different countries of Europe. So that's a question of culture and sensitivity, different sensitivities is really crucial. Yeah.
Gender, for instance.
Gender.
Reach people through women.
Okay. Okay. I'll be very short, half a minute. Is there a country in Europe that can be used as an example that has One Health in educational system that can be used as an example for our countries that don't have it at all?
Anybody? No? You're an educational expert, so I ask you.
I wanted to say I come from development cooperation, and we always have funds to help capacity building in southern countries, developing countries. We are all developing countries, you know. And now with the SDGs, they recognize that.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say that maybe there are some really good examples in Africa of what could be done, because we had like this presentation of what is happening now in Western Africa, and I think we might learn a lot also from countries that are not European countries or not Western countries, because they have One Health, like quite natural One Health, eco health, what was it, planetary health, or whatever approach. And so, yes.
May I comment on that? I would like to endorse that, because when I teach system thinking, the first thing I make people aware of is that our language is working noun, verb, noun. So it induces people that have Latin languages or European languages to think in a linear way. While if you take other languages, they actually, the word gets its meaning through the sentence, and it can change its meaning in a different context, which means that they have a completely different approach to logic or to sense making, which also means that we have a tendency to patronize over other systems, over other ways to think, while we need to learn how to think systemically, others need to learn how to think linearly. And I think we need to find a good fusion of the two approaches to science, or to evidence, more to say, and maybe find a common ground. And I think, as you say, we have a lot to learn from cultures that have a more systemic approach to life, while they learn from us a linear approach to our problems. But I think it's a mutual, it really is, we have a lot of potential in mutual learning.
I think that is an excellent point to close on. It certainly is very important food for thought. I couldn't possibly agree more. And on that, I believe we have to close this session now.